How you doing? This is a Talking Dude. Thanks for watching. I'm going to talk in this video about the whole area of race and IQ. I'm going to be as quick as I can because time is very limited, but hopefully I can get across what I'm trying to say as succinctly and clearly as possible. So race and IQ, very popular subject within skeptic circles and the so-called anti-SJW circles, whatever you want to call them. Lots of people that I'm subscribed to and that I enjoy their content talk about this whole area of race and IQ and race realism. And you'll see here, I've just done a YouTube search and you'll see some of the kind of usual suspects coming up. Stefan Molyneux, Charles Murray, Philip Rushton, what's this guy's, I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy who runs the American Renaissance website, and so on and so forth. Lots and lots of stuff out there, and a lot of people get very worried and very scared when they hear these things, but for me, I've never been worried and never been scared or troubled. So, not particularly troubled by these things, and I'm going to kind of try and explain why in this video. So first of all, from what I've seen, it does appear that where IQs have been measured amongst certain populations, it does appear that there's a pattern that people from East Asia in particular have higher IQs than white people have the next level IQs on average, this is, and then black people seem to have the lower level of IQs measured on average. And of course, this is on average. Of course, there are very many millions and millions, there's loads and loads of very, very intelligent black people, but it just seems to be that they form a smaller proportion of the overall population, racial population, than do other groups. Then that's what it seems to me. I'm not an expert in all of these things, but from what I've seen, I've not really seen any reason to particularly doubt that. But of course, I'm open to be corrected. So for me, there's two questions. One, what's the reason for this? What's the cause for this smaller or lower proportion of highly intelligent or high IQ scoring people? And two, what are the implications? So first of all, what's the cause? Now, a lot of these people in these race realist camps will say that it's basically genetic and there's nothing you can do about it. Certain racial groups are just more intelligent than certain other racial groups, and it's just how it is because it's hardwired into their genes. But another explanation, and the one that makes most sense to me, is that it's to do with different selection pressures in different environments. Basically, the long and short of it, as far as I would imagine, is that in the environment that black people have evolved over the tens of thousands of years, there was less pressure on black people there to kind of develop the higher intelligence and so forth. Whereas, and the reason for that would be, I suspect, because land and food and resources and so forth were very bountiful and plentiful. So there was not so much need to be taxing our brains to work out ways of surviving, whereas for Asians and white people in Eurasia, in the Eurasia landmass, much harsher climate up there, much colder, much longer winters and so forth. So the idea would be that in that kind of climate they had to kind of develop ingenious ways to survive, and those people, those genealogies or those lineages who survived, or those people who survived, then their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and so forth would carry those higher intelligence genes, or those genes, higher genetic intelligence down to their ancestry, meaning overall, over time, over thousands of years, you get the higher average IQs. So that would seem like a sort of a roughly sensible explanation as to why these IQ levels are different. And of course, in the modern world, unfortunately, this, it wouldn't be a problem if you're living in Africa and land is plentiful, food is plentiful and so forth. You've got a collective, a communal kind of way of life and so on. It's all fine. You develop yourselves as humans based on your needs and your environment. And if there's no pressure, there's no need to be developing these ingenious ways to survive and so forth, then you're going to get kind of you're not going to have the corresponding resulting, I should say, higher IQs and so on and so forth. But in the modern world, unfortunately now, populations that have relatively low proportions of highly intelligent people are going to suffer. Yes, it's absolutely the case that through for at least the last 300 years or so, and to this day and now in different parts of the world, black populations have faced staunch opposition from other groups in history. That's that goes without saying. But for me, I have always been, even on this channel and on my older channels such as Africans Arise, I've always been one to say, look, don't focus on the bad things that others do to you, or the things that others are doing to you. Focus on you individually and you as a population. Focus on what you have been doing wrong and how you can affect change in your circumstances. And where I'm inclined to sort of to believe these IQ figures is that the inability of black people to overcome this opposition, I think, must at least in part be due to the relative scarcity of highly intelligent men and women amongst us in comparison to white people and Asians. Now, that's my kind of understanding of the reasons, behind the situation. Now, the implications. What can we do about this? What can be done? Moving forward? How can we change? Well, for many years, I hoped that the black masses would one day be able to wake up and rise up and overcome and progress. But to be honest, at this moment in time, at least, I'm skeptical that can happen. I personally am minded to think that a large minority, or perhaps even a majority of black people, at least in the context that I'm aware of closely, so the UK and the US, a large chunk of black people do not and probably will never have the necessary desire, discipline, and importantly, the ability to change their lives for the better. I think the rot is just too deep for a lot of people. They are just too deeply embedded in the regressive culture. And I see this around me all the time. I see this around me with people making stupid decisions. Women, people creating children with no thought or very little thought about how are they going to sustain these children, how are they going to raise these children up, how they're going to keep them safe and secure, how they're going to nurture them, how they're going to give them security in the future and so forth. I'm seeing, skyrocketing levels of single parent families. I'm seeing, I'm seeing people, young boys in particular, inevitably turn into crime and violence, and yet they're not being, the communities, their families, their parents, the families and communities are seeing them as heroes, almost as heroes, rather than, ostracizing them and punishing them for bringing, mayhem to our communities. And there's a saying that you can bring the horse to the water, but you can't make you can't make it drink. And that's what it comes down to, is that all these well-meaning interventions, let's have youth centers, let's teach youngsters their history and their culture and so forth. I just think that you've got to be realistic and realize that, particularly once you've got to, say, your teenage years, if by that stage, by the time you get to your late teens, you're on foolishness, if you're on the roadman nonsense or whatever by that age, if you're having children left, right and centre willy-nilly, if you're showing no inclination to try and find work and so on, or even get involved in your community and to make a difference and so forth, by that age, you're probably never going to, because, by then you're fully developed, your brain is fully developed, and your habits are fully set in. Of course, there are always outliers. There are always people who will turn their lives around. But speaking about averages, I just think a large chunk, possibly a majority of black people, are just going to be, trapped in that life forever. And they're going to hand it down to their children, unfortunately. And their children are going to hand it down to their children. Yes, there'll always be one or two who will escape. But I think I see it around me. And most black people, if you're honest with ourselves, you'll agree that we see this intergenerational, degeneracy. It's not helped, of course, by the system. The system, I've talked a lot in my videos about the housing situation, about land and so forth, and there are bigger issues, there are bigger pressures which are damaging our communities and damaging us as individuals. Of course that is the case, and those issues, a lot of those issues affect black people disproportionately, yes, of course, but we are doing ourselves no favours, is what I'm trying to say. So what to do? Well, I think that those with the intelligence and the inclination to do so can and should make a change for them. For us as individuals and our families, we can make a change. And I think that the two main things that we need to do is to, one, separate from the degeneracy, and two, militantly practice what's called assortative mating. Now, to understand what I mean by separating from the degeneracy, I think I watched a really good video about it by a YouTuber that I've only discovered called Square.peg. He's a MGTOW, black MGTOW, but he talks a lot. He's made a lot of good videos about the general black population as well, and he talks about how living in cities is the reason why you have higher levels of crime and degeneracy in cities generally is because you've got a higher concentration of people. And this is what I've talked about a lot in my videos, how it's no surprise that when you have the council estates in South London and other parts of London and Britain and the US and so on, that's where you have the bad men running around, the roadmen running around causing havoc, the high concentration of single parent families, the low educational achievement, the low levels of wealth and so forth. It concentrates. When you have loads of people concentrate together in cities, that's where you have a concentration of the negativity. So I think that black people who are, intelligent and right-minded and conscientious and so forth, I think, a lot of us, maybe even most of us, need to get out, physically remove ourselves from the hood, physically remove ourselves from these urban environments, from these ghettos, in order to give ourselves and our children a chance to prosper. But even not just on a physical level, I think even just, if you've got people in your families and your communities, but in your families and friends who are on the foolishness, it's time to cut yourselves off from them. Yes, you can be friendly and civil with them and so forth, but I think it's really important to just be bold enough to just say, look, I'm not running with you anymore. I'm not socializing with you anymore. I'm not going to be, trying to look out for you and have your back and all this kind of stuff. No, you have to separate yourselves. Come out from among them, as it says in the Bible in various points. Come out from among these people, because they're just going to drag you down. Bad company corrupts good character, again from the Bible. So that's the first thing. We've got to separate from the degeneracy and associate with like-minded, good-minded, intelligent, other conscientious black people. And this goes to the second point, assortative mating. Now, assortative mating, here we go. This is a Wikipedia page. I'll just read a quick first sentence or so. Assortative mating is a mating pattern and a form of sexual selection in which individuals with similar phenotypes mate with one another more frequently than would be expected under a random mating pattern. Some examples of similar phenotypes: body size, skin coloration, pigmentation, and age. Assortative mating, also referred to as positive assortative mating or homogamy, can increase genetic relatedness within the family. Anyway, the point is you're intelligently mating. That's what I understand that to mean. You're not just, or should I say, everybody practices assortative mating, but unfortunately a lot of this involves, you just mate with the prettiest girl you can find. You just mate with the most available man you can find. You just mate with the toughest ute in town, or you mate with the woman who's going to be, who's going to give it up because they're available and so forth. This is what unfortunately a lot of black people are doing. Real talk. A lot of people are just, sex is like a social pastime for a lot of young black people, and that's why we're ending up with so much single parenthood, out of wedlock births and so forth. What those with their heads screwed on need to do is to practice assortative mating by choosing mates on the basis of desirable social qualities, desirable to us social qualities. So not just are they pretty, are they attractive and so forth, because you absolutely of course need that, but also how intelligent are they, how emotionally intelligent are they, how intellectually oriented are they, how trustworthy are they? This is what I'm talking about. When we're talking about intelligence now, IQ, if you are a fairly intelligent person, you need to look for a partner who's also fairly intelligent, because you know why? You're then increasing the chances that your children are going to be fairly intelligent. But it's not just about IQ, it's about the whole gamut, the whole range of character traits, the positive character traits that you need to look for. And also you need to be looking at people's families. It sounds harsh, but looking at someone's parents and their relationship with their parents tells you a lot about them, and tells you a lot about them on a genetic level as well. Because if your mate is fairly intelligent and their parents are both fairly intelligent, and you can measure that by, yes, you can look at their academic achievements and so forth, but you can also just look at their work, what kind of work that they're doing, how do they converse with you, what kind of things do they talk about, how do they talk, are they rational, logical kinds of people? Those are the things you need to be looking at. And if you can, you know what, if you can, look at their grandparents as well. You know, that's where you're in the kind of the holy grail, because if you've got grandparents who are of high stock, and you've got parents of high stock, and your partner of high stock, then you're sorted, because that definitely is genes. Any accident of environment, gets wiped out if you're looking at 2-3 generations. And this is what we need to do. We need to mate with black fellow, well, you don't mate with whoever you want to mate with, but if you're interested in kind of continuing your lineage, or racial lineage as it were, then mate with black people who have those kinds of traits. Now, and I think it's vital that black people employ these assortative mating. Now, going back to the whole race and IQ thing, you will see a lot of these race and IQ people talking about something called regression to the mean. Here I've got a video that's got Philip Rushton, who's a big player or was a big player in this, I think he's dead now, in this race realism kind of world. And in this video he's talking about this regression to the mean, and he says, oh, it's really sad actually that you might get two really intelligent black people coming together having a child, but their child has a lower IQ. And why is that? It's because, he argues, that the child has regressed back to the mean IQ level for the racial group. The idea is that the mean racial IQ of in black people's case, which apparently is 85, which is very, very low. And the idea is that even if you've got two intelligent people who come together and have a child, then their child or their children are more likely to have a much lower IQ than them, and it's going to go down to basically down to the IQ of the black group as a whole. And this idea is very prevalent amongst these so-called race realists. I found, when I was searching on Twitter, I found this stream involving Millennial Woes. Millennial Woes is a dude who, is a Scottish guy who's a white nationalist, ethno-nationalist or whatever, and he's open and honest. To be fair with him, he's open about what he's about. So in this tweet here, you see he says he thinks that black people are less intelligent and race mixing with them is a genetic downgrade for white people. Open and honest, there you go. Prefer that than people who try and dance around and pretend that they're really concerned about black people. They're concerned, they're not happy, that black people are in trouble, but it's just the way it is. It's just, Millennial Woes comes out and just says he doesn't care, he doesn't like black people, basically. But what he says here is interesting. You go down through this stream here, and he says something that belies what he really, he uses this regression to the mean idea. Sorry, I should have got it ready. But basically, sorry guys, I should have got this ready. But basically, he uses this idea. Do you know what? Let me search for it. I did search for it earlier. People say to him, oh, but do you not believe, you're saying that black people are of a lower IQ than white people. But there are very, very intelligent black people out there, and he says, yeah, but their children will regress to the black mean. Hold on a second. Bear with me. To the mean. It's very common. This is a very common, very popular thing to be said by these race realist people. And he actually gets challenged on this in a couple of these tweets. He gets challenged. People say to him, no, you're misunderstanding this regression to the mean. You're misrepresenting this idea of regression to the mean. Here it is, sorry. Yeah, here we go. So he says, here we go. He says this. Someone says to him, I assume you do realise that the whole blacks are less intelligent argument is based on averages. In all likelihood, you could probably find a black lady that's not only highly intelligent, but would be a boon for your genetic lineage. Then Millennial Rose replies, no, because her offspring will drift back down to the mean. He's Scottish. He doesn't talk like that though. That's like a Glasgow accent. But anyway, will drift down to the mean for her ethnic group, which will be much lower than the mean for my ethnic group. It's called regression to the mean. And then this guy, Piccolo Martin, replies and says, false. Even if your genetic argument is proved true, which it isn't, since reversion can only happen if there is no sexual selection and only once. Plenty of black people will be from families more selected than yours. LOL, even your own J-Man explains this. And he's referring to this blog by another race realist, actually. This guy's a race realist called J-Man. And he explains the whole regression to the mean on this blog of his from 2015. And he points out that basically the point, here we go, here it is. So basically, I won't read it out, but basically the point he makes is that yes, on a if you don't know anything about people's parents and grandparents, then it's likely that you can say, okay, if they're black then and they have children, the child is probably going to regress to the racial group mean if you don't know anything about their parents. But if you know that someone's parents also were very intelligent, were highly intelligent, and particularly if you know that their grandparents are highly intelligent, then the regression to the mean stops at the point where the grandparents had their children. I'll read this out here. For populations, the equation works similarly. If a group of people with a mean IQ of 130 who come from a population with a mean of 100 go off somewhere and have children, the next generation will have a mean IQ of 118. So you see there, yeah, the mean, even the parents, the main group had an IQ of 130, but because their overall group had a mean IQ, average IQ of 100, their offspring will revert a little bit back toward that mean, original mean, which is 118. Back to the article. Now here's the part that gives a lot of people trouble. The children of this group, the third generation, will also have a mean IQ of 118. Why? Because the initial event changed the mean. The new population mean, as far as the breeder's equation is concerned, is 118. As long as they mate endogamously, and this is important, there will be no change to their average IQ thanks to regression, only selection. This should illustrate the flaw in thinking that regression happens forever. If daughter populations regressed back to the mean of their original source populations indefinitely, how could there be any selection for quantitative traits? Think about it, and that's the point. If there was these people like Millennial Woes and other race realists try and make us think that there's like this racial IQ, mean IQ, which is now it's just there and it can't be changed. It's embedded in black people forever. And they really believe this. They really push this idea, because I think it's partly because, like a lot of people on the black nationalist side, they are so committed to the idea of race, and they're so embedded. You know, they're so devoted to race as an organizing principle for everything that they do, and particularly on a social, political level, that they're now trying to make race this more of a genetic thing than it actually is. And the point that's being made here is that when you're talking about individuals, and this is the point, I'm an individualist and I'm a libertarian, and when you focus on individuals, treat someone as an individual. Look at their parents and look at their grandparents. And the fact is that if you've got someone with two generations of high intelligent ancestry, parent and grandparents, then they are going to be intelligent themselves, and their children, if they mate with other people who are similarly highly intelligent and similarly have got highly intelligent parents and grandparents, then you're going to create a new lineage which is similarly high, which is high intelligence, if that makes sense. I'm not making full sense here, but the point is here that this regression to the mean idea that the race realists put out there is I think it's deceptive. It's very deceptive, and it's very sad, because I've seen a lot of comments from black people and some mixed race people online where they say, oh, because of this regression to the mean, I'm so hopeless, because they're thinking, oh, but maybe if I marry someone who's really high intelligent, then it's fine because my children will be highly intelligent and so forth. But they've bought into the race realists kind of interpretation of regression to the mean to make it sound like we're doomed as black people. There's absolutely nothing we can do to escape this alleged, genetic intelligence, lower, genetically determined lower intelligence. So, for example, here on this American Renaissance website, there's an article from someone called Sade Adebayo called "I Am Black and a Race Realist" from October 2015, and this person talks about this. I think it's a woman, but this person talks about regression to the mean down here. Let me have a look. Yeah, she talks about how. Yeah, she says, I've met a few black race realists online as well. One lives in Nigeria and bravely chooses not to relocate to the West. We regularly post statuses on Facebook about what's happening to whites worldwide. The other lives in Canada but prefers to keep his race realist view secret. He dates white women and wants to marry one. Even after I talked to him about regression to the mean, he told me that given his high IQ and that of his parents, he doesn't think that he would be dragging down a wife's children intellectually. Look at that. This person, this so-called black race realist, because of this regression to the mean misunderstanding, thinks that, as I'm saying, thinks that black people are just always going to have lower intelligent black children, even if they procreate with other highly intelligent people who have got highly intelligent parents. And look at this next sentence. It's just astonishing. It says, I've tried fruitlessly to convince my white girlfriends to avoid black men without sounding like I'm motivated by jealousy. One dates black men almost exclusively and suffers as a result. She has had black men vandalize her car and cheat on her, but last I checked, she was pursuing yet another black man who she insists is different from the others. I continue to hope that she won't end up like a never married white female co-worker who has two mulattoed kids from two different black men, neither of whom pay child support or act as a father. I've tried hard to figure out why some white women behave in this way. My theories run from social acceptance to low intelligence. And this is the thing, this race realism bastardization of the regression to the mean idea as it applies to genetics is, I think, is aimed at two things. One, it's aimed at entrenching racist white people, entrenching them in their racism. It's aimed at entrenching them in their supposed, scientifically, sound race realist ideas by giving, a veneer of scientific validity to their desire to want to treat individuals not as individuals, but their desire to want to treat individuals as members of a race. They want to treat me as not as me, but they want to treat me as, oh, he's a black person, which means that he's got a low IQ, or if he hasn't got a low IQ, his children will have low IQs because black people always regress to the low IQ mean. And related to that, I think it's designed as well to demoralize black people, to demoralize intelligent black people who would otherwise be, at the forefront of creating new communities where there is that higher level of I'll say intelligence, but by intelligence I mean all of the positive things: so intelligence, social awareness, trustworthiness, accountability, and respect for academic achievement, financial literacy, all these kinds of things is what I'm talking about. But it's designed to demoralize those black people as well, and I think it's working as seen by this person. Presumably this person is real, it's working, and yeah, it's a sad thing, but hopefully in this video, I'm going to stop now because I've definitely been going on a little bit too long, but hopefully in this video I've kind of explained my thoughts on this whole question of race and IQ. To summarize, yes, it seems likely to me. I've got no reason particularly to doubt that there appears to be a lower proportion of high intelligent black people amongst overall black populations than there are of high intelligent people of other races amongst their populations, and I think there's reasons which probably come from historical selection and environmental pressures, but I think that we can counteract this and we can do something about this, particularly those black people who are highly intelligent and those black people who are minded to do something positive and create a black identity and so forth, can do something about this by separating from the nonsense, from the foolishness and the degeneracy, and also by practicing assortative mating, militantly practicing assortative mating, taking great care in who we mate with, who we start families with. And I think that the race realists, be very wary of these race realists, because granted, a lot of them are, I think, honestly, being driven by the scientific facts. I think J-Man counts as one of them. J-Man is, as I understand, he's a race realist, and from what I've read of his, he's driven by scientific facts, it seems. But a lot of these race realists are not. A lot of them are just racist. A lot of them are like these millennial woe guy. He's racist. At least he's an honest racist, but a lot of them are just can't come out and just say, look, he just thinks that white people are superior to black people and black people are degenerate and so forth by genetically degenerate. He just comes, he's honest about it, but a lot of them don't want to just come out and say that. So what I'm saying to all people, really, not just black people, but everybody, beware of these race realists and beware of their arguments. Yeah. All right. That's all I'm going to talk about on this matter. Thanks for watching. Take care. I'll be interested to know people's comments actually on this topic, because it's a bit of a departure from what I've talked about in recent times with all the housing and land stuff. All right. Take care. Bye bye.